are now locked into the Live with Brandon Blakney podcast. Here is your host, Brandon Blakney.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Brandon Blakney, a.k.a. Brandon Lee TV, back at it again. Got my guy, Supa Dave here. Dave, I appreciate you joining me this evening.
I appreciate you having me, baby.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Just been following your journey for a few months now since we've been following each other on Twitter. Wanted to get it on, chop it up with you, man. Just starting off, I got to give my guests a chance to kind of get to know the audience a little bit and vice versa. So tell us a little bit about your background and where that love of sports journalism came from.
All right. So my background in sports journalism kind of goes back. It's because of my family. I'm from an athletic family. And so I'm actually a published author. I got Essence Magazine bestseller, Negro Intellect, a guide for young black males. And because I was a published author, one of my baby cousins was in the Little League World Series many years ago. And I was like, I wonder, will they let me get press credentials? So I submitted and everything. They were like, yeah, come on up. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it wasn't anything special. I mean, Williamsport, Pennsylvania is a very, very, very small town. So it wasn't like we had like anything special for it.
But y'all was the show down there, or up there, I should say. Y'all was the show, though.
That's the show. That's all that goes on up there every year, once a year. Just 2-3 weeks of Little League baseball. And it's a big thing up there. People come around from the whole state. I mean, the games are packed. It's actually kind of surprising to see. Mm-hmm. But I'm an Aggie. I got my undergraduate degree in civil engineering from North Carolina A&T State University. Got my master's at Georgia Tech. I'm a lifelong basketball player, and I'm from a family of hoopers. So the way that I really started getting into it is I'm a big-time Duke Blue Devil fan.
Oh, man, we won't hold it against you.
I'm from Durham, you know what I'm saying? I got represent for the home team. So that's how that came about. Bull City all day. That's how we do.
Respect.
And I've been following Duke for a long time. And I got real close to a lot of people in the program. And I'm a moderator for the Duke Basketball Report. And that's like the number one fan forum for Duke basketball.
Okay.
So I'm actually a moderator for that. So as time went on, I got real cool with some people in Coach K's circle. And he started his site on 24/7 Sports. And he was like, yo, we trying to get started. I need a little help, need a little this, need a little that. Mm-hmm. So I would do spot duty for him here and there. And after a while, that turned into me interviewing Austin Rivers and all kinds of recruits for Duke, especially if they were here in Georgia. I drive to the game, talk to them after the game. I even got YouTube footage of like my first interview with Austin Rivers. It's crazy.
Okay.
Look at him now, because he's like a grown man now. I'm like, God.
Oh, no, I get it, man. I was a sports scout for a while with the Phenom Hoop Report. So scouting them guys, seeing them go from high school to the league is nuts.
Right. Austin got a child now. It's like, I remember on the court, he was just the cockiest little thing. And now he's like grown, mature. He's more like Doc Rivers now. Mm-hmm. He would never admit that, but like father, like son. So just watching him grow up. And so I got to a point where I felt like HBCUs, especially mine, the Aggies, weren't getting enough coverage. And I was like, we're making hella news right now. We got Celebration Bowl championships, going crazy in track and field. I'm like, the only people reporting us is HBCU Game Day and A&T.
Right.
Like, that's it. I'm like, nah. And not just that, but HBCU Game Day, they do a great job. But
absolutely,
there's only so much they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they trying to be all over the country. It's like 6 of them. It ain't a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So really, they focus on more regional stuff because it's just hard to get down to anything but the classics and stuff like that. So
right.
But they can keep A&T and Winston and some of the North Carolina schools in the mix because they're all in Atlanta or North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was like, I just want to focus on A&T, and so I had the idea. I took it to the folks at CBS, and they were like, "You kind of popular. Let's see what you can do." I was like, "All right, let's do it." So, like, writing is my thing. Like, everything I do in life to make money, I write. So, I do real estate consulting. I'm a program manager with Fulton County. published author. I'm doing stuff with kids. I just write for everything. So even the site is writing. And we had to get things to a point where the name became more recognizable before we brought more people on board. That's where we're at now. Is ramping up to be even more inclusive and give more details.
Most
And
definitely, most definitely. I love how you're sharing spotlight on all the sports. Basketball season, of course, going on right now. Seems like this month of January, the men's team is kind of finding their stride. I know a kid I was happy about, Marcus Watson, scouted him in high school when he was at West Forsyth and with Team CP3. It seems like he's starting to figure it out. They're in sixth place in conference, as you know. Girls only lost one game, I think, in January, number one in conference. What are you seeing around Aggies hoops right now as far as excitement and development?
it's crazy right now. I mean, it's a lot of firsts. It's a lot of new stuff going on. There's a lot of new people coming to Corbett. That's Corbett Center, A&T
Mm-hmm.
Stadium or Coliseum, should I say, gym. But Corbett Indoor Stadium. A lot of people are doing all this for the first time. New conference. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Aggies played in the Big South last year for just 1 year, and the men and women's both had a hard time. So it was ironic to see us step up in conference and do better. And that's due to the coaches stepping up as well. I mean, the Big South helped a bit with recruiting, but I think the CAA attracted different kinds of athletes and better athletes. And not just because it was the CAA, but because the Aggies, of course, are reaching for the stars. I got to give a shout out to Coach Will Jones. Uh, his footprint
Absolutely, my guy.
and his imprint is all over the Aggie men's basketball team. He recruited Marcus. He recruited Cam Woods. He recruited some guys that you guys haven't even seen play yet because they've been hurt, and that's Will Felton.
Yeah, Will's really good. I saw him at high school at Millbrook High School, transferred from Arizona State. I think him and Duncan Powell, I think, can really get him a lot of minutes coming up for sure.
Right. He didn't waste Duncan because it's obvious Duncan is still rounding into form. Like he's got a lot of talent. The talent's there, but he's still, he's tapping in and he's getting used to a new conference, and playing hard for the first time. But without our big men, he's being forced to play a little bit more big than he wants to. So his position right now is coming off the bench. But once our bigs come back, he can move back to that 3 or 4 slot when Marcus or whoever is on the bench, or just depending on the makeup of the team. The team is built to run, and it appears to have caught a lot of teams in the Colonial off guard. I don't know what happened against Monmouth this weekend. It really doesn't make a lot.
Yeah, man.
They lost to the worst team in the league, but that's how it is. The worst team in the league ain't always going to be the worst team in the league.
Right.
Like, you get tired of losing. And they came to A&T and, hey, sometimes you see the right crowd, the right atmosphere, you feed off it too. And so they came and they got hype. And, it's been a run. Now, A&T had been on like a 4 or 5 day layoff at this time. So getting back into that groove it can be hard sometime after a layoff. And Monmouth have been playing and they kept it coming. They played a good game, but the Aggies are still doing way better than this. Like I checked. The women were predicted to finish 9th in the Colonial. They're number 1.
Yep.
The men were picked to finish 11th in the Colonial out of 12 teams. And they're right there in the middle of the pack. They're like 5th or 6th after that loss to Monmouth. But that 5th or 6th could change after tomorrow's games because like the middle of the pack is like really tight.
I saw it's like a game or two difference between like 3rd and 8th or something crazy.
Right. So, I'm geeked. I'm excited about it. Coach Philip Shumpert, he's doing a great job. He's interim coach right now. We don't know what the Aggies are going to do with that right now, but hopefully it's for the best. AD Earl Hinton has showed that he wants to win. Now, who wins, it kind of depends because he wants to win with his people, his guys. Like A&T is in a transitional area where we want to have people that understand where we're going.
Right.
And in that, it is forcing us to not forcing us, is really making A&T adapt to different approaches to getting coaches and staff, because we have traditionally, one of the guys that knew about the MEAC and the SWAC and all that, but those times have changed. We need coaches that got experience in the Colonial now, that know these players and know these coaches and know some of these schemes that different teams are running. Whereas some things in other conferences, we already knew like the back of our hand,
Right.
No longer, I won't say no longer a challenge, but it wasn't like we had to go in there and figure out, squares between circles. Now,
No, definitely.
So Aggies are thriving, and I'm really proud of that. The track team is back at it too. So, they're already back winning the classics and the meets. So we're just business as usual.
Oh, no doubt. I saw. I'm born and raised in Winston-Salem, so very familiar with the Aggies and the Rams. Went to UNC Pembroke, so definitely a rivalry with them Rams. But I know I saw too, man. You even had a article I checked out on the young men that committed for shot put for track, which is I noticed too is something that I noticed that they had struggled with that, and that was one of the weaknesses. So it was cool to see them address that. You mentioned coaches that know the CAA, and the football team brought in Coach Vincent Brown, who spent some years around this league. What were your initial thoughts on the hire? What is the energy around that Aggies football program? Because Dave, I'm not gonna lie to you, this past season. I was a weekend sports anchor for a TV station up there in North Dakota. Saw the Aggies come in and play North Dakota State, and I was hyping them up, telling my boys like, this ain't gonna be no pushover right here. Like, the Aggies is a big deal up there. We got a weather girl that's an A&T alumni as well. So we was hyped for them to come up there, and it didn't go quite as I thought it would. It got pretty ugly, as I'm sure you know. But what can we expect in this next chapter of Aggie football?
Well, let's just say, we played North Dakota State. They're the pinnacle. That's football,
man. There's some bad boys. It's some D1s that don't want to come up. It's some FBS programs, I should say, some Power 5 FBS that don't want to come up there to Fargo, North Dakota.
No, 50%. They will be 50% of FBS programs. I will die on my grave on that. You gotta understand. They had 9 players rush against A&T when we played them. That is literally just brutalizing your opponent. Like you're trying to be nice, you can't even stop. It's like you just beat it. They had fullbacks catching passes for touchdowns.
Oh yeah.
I was just like, God.
Hey, that kid Hunter Lipke, 44, he'll be in the league for sure.
Right. They got guys on the league. They actually have had mass depletion after this roster this year. They're gonna pretty much have to fill up their whole roster, and I guarantee you they still will be competing for the FCS National Championship next
Absolutely.
year. This is a program that they only lost to the national champion this year.
Twice. Yeah.
So it wasn't like they just fell off. No, they had a team that's been literally spending their lives preparing for that this year.
Oh, absolutely.
This is their year. They're going crazy probably still right now.
It's a different type of man up there. It's crazy, Dave. I tell you, they lose a game. If they don't blow a team out by 28, people start looking around like, are we as good this year? I don't know. Like, we only won by 3 touchdowns.
Right. Right. I understand now. That's something I get, because as a Duke observer, people want to blow everybody out by 40. I'm like, nah. Teams have gotten better. Like they're definitely catching up. Like, and with that, you understand, even North Dakota State is in a sweet spot. They're in a place where they pretty much run the recruiting in that area. I mean, they get the pick of the mill in the North and South Dakota, so it's like, that's all they do up there is play football, and it's cold. Like, these guys are built different.
Man, I'm cold. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you now, them North Dakota winters is different. Oh my God. But I think you touched on a really good point. That's something that Coach Entz and that staff does really well is recruits the area, recruits the Midwest. And I think that's something that the Aggies were kind of not doing as well of a job of as they could have in past years, locking down the triad. Do you think that Coach Brown would do a better job of that? Has that been an emphasis around there that you've been hearing about?
Yes, I did want to get back to Coach Brown. All right, so as far as how we felt about the hire, um, there have been rumblings with alumni about how people perceive things with the program and everything. So people did want some things to change. Did they want a new coach? I don't know. But I know that obviously we know the powers that be did want a new coach. Coach Brown gets hired, and most were pleasantly surprised is the best way to put it.
Okay.
His demeanor, the way he carries himself, his integrity, his engagement is different than what the Aggies are traditionally used to.
How would you say different? Like different how?
Things have been typically kept in-house, closed mouth. Coach Brown is a bit more approachable. Like he follows me on Twitter. Like that's crazy. Only assistant coaches have followed me on Twitter. And the fact that he's a full-grown head coach in the CAA and he has his own Twitter account and all that. Sam Washington didn't have a Twitter account.
Got you.
See what I'm saying? So that's kind of like a sign of the times thing where you're like, okay, this guy's a bit more engaged. He's got a pulse of things. And he's literally in week 3 and he's already offered like 8 or 9 players and he's already got commits. So
I've seen that.
Mm-hmm. Right. He's not playing around. He didn't come to A&T to get on social media and talk about what A&T is doing. He came to A&T to get to work and make A&T a better place and make the football program a better place. And you have to respect that. It is noble and honorable the way he's taken things into his hands. And like, who wouldn't want a coach that literally gets right to work? He hadn't said a peep since his actual day of hiring. Like there's only been like maybe a couple of interviews, requests, but otherwise he's working every day, and you gotta love that. Not that the former coaches didn't, but there were other issues with that, and they were hamstrung by other things. And I think that was part of the transition. It was like the transition happened kind of like in really 3 or 4 stages, because there was Broadway, then there was Washington, and then we lost the coaches to North Carolina Central and Fort Valley last year.
Right.
We had a bunch of guys coming this year to help out Sam Washington, almost like he called in a mob squad to help out for this season. Last season, the Big South, they were expected to win the championship, and I think winning that championship really left a bad taste.
What? Because they were in the finals against Campbell, right?
Actually, Gardner-Webb, the final game of the season.
Gardner-Webb, okay.
Was the game to decide the champion, and we lost. So technically we were co-champions, but we weren't because we lost to the champion.
Right.
So,
right.
Second place just wasn't good enough, and I felt like people were fuming, but there were other issues, things that I feel like Coach Brown is going to handle. Like player discipline was a big issue.
Yeah.
And I've seen it myself. I mean, not naming no names, but sometimes after the play, there's a lot of barking when you should be getting back to your position. And I don't know if that's Washington's style, but let's just say it had become the team style. And that lack of discipline showed on the field. I mean, we were a heavily penalized team the last 2 years, very heavily penalized. Now, some of it I gave, fresh off of COVID, I give it to guys getting back in shape, guys happy to be back on the field. But this year they had a goal. But I mean, still, we had quarterback injury issues this year. I mean, Washington did what he could, what he had. And we still we've got 4 players. Let me think about it, but we just had 5. We had 7 players in the transfer portal. 4 left, 3 stayed, or is it 5 left? 5 left, 3 stayed. There you go. but they were great players. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm of the position that while they were great, they were not inexpendable. I mean, no player truly is. I mean, you got to think about it. Florida cut Cam Newton. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
Like Randy Moss got the Marshall after getting kicked off the team twice.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, talent is great, but talent that adheres to the team makes the team better. And
Absolutely.
so I feel like we're going to see more of that this year. We're going to see more of an A&T team that's about business. It's not going to be any prime time showing off glitz and clamor. It's going to be literally back to the basics. A&T beat you to death and put in the second string.
That's something else that I've noticed that one thing that you said earlier, one thing that Coach Brown mentioned too, kind of like some differences. He didn't say it outright, but like some differences between I think how him and Eddie George have gone about things, being former NFL pros, coaching at HBCUs compared to maybe like a Ed Reed or a Prime Time, where he said he's been doing it for 20 years, and you also mentioned that he kind of just got to work. It wasn't any like social media flare and glare going on. What are your thoughts on that? Just kind of some of those differences in what you're seeing.
Well, I mean, the pros, especially the pros, had to work, stay in the league, become all-star. Like, there's only one Dion. There's only one player in the NFL that's literally flaunted his gifts. Even Bo Jackson was a quiet, down, get to work. I'll see y'all in the commercial. Then I got to go back to practice. Even technically, even Michael Jordan was that way. Michael Jordan wasn't actually a flamboyant guy. He just was flamboyant. Like, he didn't do a lot of trash talking except on the court. I mean, so most of those guys are that way. They're nose to the grindstone, hit the gym, wake up, follow your regimens. Like in our case, go to school, get your work done, come back, training table, last workout, look at some video. This is a way of life. This is not like some of these guys came to college to be on the football team. Then some of these guys came to college to go pro. You know what I'm saying? You got to figure out which one you are. And a lot of people don't realize that you got to give up a lot for that dream.
Right.
And not everyone is just that talented. Some of them have to put in work. Like as far as sports goes, my line brother, Michael Hamilton, he got drafted by the Chargers in the 3rd round back in 1997. Nothing flamboyant about him. Nose to the grindstone, big boy. He just goes to work. And for him to get drafted out of A&T in the 3rd round, we were hot back then because we also just had Jermaine Stevens get drafted by the Steelers the year before. So we were hot on the radar. And these guys are not trying to show off. Like, granted, some of these guys nowadays, they're hip-hop generation, so to speak. So, they got some chains and stuff. That's understandable. I mean, chains, that's like the flashiest it used to be,
Right.
But the outlets they have now are different. You know what I'm saying? There's still a lot of pro athletes that during the season, they don't get on Twitter. They don't get on Facebook.
Right.
They don't have time because it's a distraction. And, some people are like, oh, the coaches should tweet. The coaches should do this. But most coaches look at it like, how am I a coach while I'm tweeting?
Right. No, I mean, I know the social media has definitely rubbed some people the wrong way. I know even you've been very opinionated about it, and I've seen it a lot in the headlines where, certain programs are on social media more. Even when I think it was some of your stuff I was seeing when North Carolina Central beat Jackson State, I believe.
Right.
And, all the cameras were kind of in the Jackson State locker room and they had lost the game.
All of them. Only people in North Carolina, the winning locker room, North Carolina Central's locker room, was me and their media people. Like the people they hired to document whatever, just me. I was the only person that walked. And it wasn't even really like, it wasn't something I planned. I was just out there with the winners taking pictures, and then they were like, all right, it was time to go to the locker room. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I turned around and looked, and everybody's like a huge like crop circle around Dion. He's praying or singing the Jackson State anthem or something, whatever. And I got a video of it. They're around him, like it's like Groupieville. I'm like, I have never seen so much attention put on the loser. Like
Right.
it's like Joe Burrow having a crowd around him last night after they got decimated by the Chiefs. Like it did not make sense to me. I was like, this is different. So that groupie level of attention won't exist at A&T, and we don't want that. It's because we're not that kind of program. For Jackson, it worked out great because Jackson is a great program, but they needed to add a spark to get things back, and Dion was definitely a spark. Bethune tried the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But see, it's hit or miss.
What do you think went wrong there? Why didn't that work out in your opinion?
Well, one, they let him on campus. I almost cursed just then. But they let him on campus before he had a contract, and they let him get engaged with the students before he was hired. So you got football players like that's our coach, but he ain't even put ink on paper. And they want this guy they've known for 2 or 3 weeks. I understand. He's passionate. Good. Got it. But he's shown that he's also maybe not the best spokesperson for the university. Like the way you handle things. Like this is something like it put Coach Brown into a better parallel when seeing what was happening with Reed.
Right.
Like, oh man, like we got none of those problems. Like, if and see, this is a problem that we kind of have. It's a generational thing. Like when I was at A&T, if you didn't like something or something was not to your liking, you just fixed it yourself or you just did it yourself. You're like, man, I'm not doing that. I clean it, because I still got to use it. But now they just won't use it and be expecting somebody else to clean it, and then they'll complain about it. It's like, nah, y'all are stewards of this university too. So get in. So with like Reed, if he'd have just flipped the message and said, hey guys, I'm here, I'm new, but I see some things that we can work on together. Let's have all the athletes together and let's clean up the campus. Let's, you know what I'm saying? I'm rich, I'll pay for food. Instead, he goes on social media like a raving maniac and gets mad at the school and the Hurricane and whoever else. He's punching windows. He's back and forth with Dion. He's back and forth with Shannon Sharp. He's on interviews. And this is all without getting the job.
What kind of light do you think that shed on Bethune-Cookman? Like, I feel like at UNC Pembroke, there's stuff that not just HBCUs go through, but smaller schools in general that have the same situations that's going on. What are your thoughts on that? Just like the whole Bethune-Cookman situation, what light they were kind of painted in?
The problem comes in is like you say, with Pembroke, every school has problems. Being from North Carolina, I know a lot about the university system. I know that there are schools in that university like Shawan. I remember when Shawan was basically a community college. Mm-hmm. So it's things that happen to every university because it comes down to maintenance, funding, and staff and facilities. Every school doesn't have that. Like you say, with small, like UNC Wilmington. UNC Wilmington has had all kinds of issues over the years. A lot of it because they're on the coast. Saltwater is tearing their buildings down. So, ECU's had issues. So people took Bethune-Cookman and made them somehow a flag bearer for all HBCUs and their problems. But Bethune is a private school, first and foremost. Like, they're responsible for their school. They might get federal grants or whatever, but I don't know how that works. They lost their accreditation. I mean, they're doing stuff outside of the realm of stuff that even matters in sports. Those things need to be taken care of first. Like, talk to somebody else. Like, I wouldn't mind, and Zoom shouldn't either, if they just suspended their football program for a year and took care of some of their issues. Give the guys some red shirts, say, hey, you can stay in school on scholarship, but this is what we have to do. We can do it as a group. You can do it. You can leave. We'll give you a hardship transfer, whatever you like. But Bethune can't be responsible for all the HBCU's problems. Every school has problems. I mean, if you've actually traveled to HBCUs, you would know this. Like people would know this. Like, but you also have to travel. Like when most people are thinking about comparing HBCUs to schools, they don't do apples and apples comparison. They don't compare Livingstone to William and Mary, two small itty bitty schools. But William and Mary's got way more money. William and Mary is actually in. Let's use Williams College. Williams College is a little bitty, tiny, prestigious college, almost considered Ivy League. Livingstone is beating them in a number of categories when it comes to athletics. Like Williams College is just where you go to school. They don't care about any of that other stuff. Like, but they still got 100-year-old buildings. If you got a 100-year-old building on any campus, it's going to have problems. And most universities got old buildings. So you can't be comparing A&T to UGA or Bethune to Florida State. I mean, these people are working with totally different purses. And people don't seem to, that doesn't go through people's head as far as funding is concerned, staffing is concerned, maintenance crews are concerned. Like some of these people don't have housekeeping, whereas Florida State, they got housekeeping. They got services that literally come get the students' trash because at some point they just decided the students couldn't handle it no more. So they were like, I guess we gotta do this. Where, even back in the day at Florida State, they had to have people did that stuff themselves. Like I'm from Durham, so I know what Carolina used to look like. I know what Duke used to look like. These schools have grown tremendously. I remember some of those halls, like they're just little brick buildings. I mean, they've been there forever. And trust me, they've had issues. Every school in North Carolina had asbestos at one point in time. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So people don't think about these things in terms. So most of these people had to get federal grants to get that asbestos out. And, they had to be removed. It had to be removed on a rolling basis because literally every asbestos contractor in the nation was swamped at that point in time when everybody realized we use asbestos in all our university buildings. So it was those kind of things that people don't really take into account as far as how Bethune is being treated. Bethune is a great school, and I mean, they're just in transition in a number of ways. And sometimes that's how stuff falls through the cracks. But it shouldn't have taken a football coach higher to get people this riled up. Like these kids should have already been riled up. And I think that's how people have gotten confused. So now Bethune's problems are all HBCU's problems when some of these HBCUs are not having their problems. Even the ones with buku money, like Howard. Howard has buku money. They got nearly $1 billion in endowment, but they were having dorm problems just last year. Felicia Scott and them shutting doors on people while they have secret meetings. So it's not the money. It's about how it's being managed, and not even being managed. It still has to be allocated. Somebody's got to vote on it, and people got different things they want to do with that money.
Absolutely. Dave, I appreciate you joining me this evening. Let the people know where they can follow you at on Twitter and all social media. Keep up with you.
If you guys want to follow me, you can, of course, go to ANT.com. That's AYANTEE.com. Basically, A&T spelled out. It's what I took the name from our yearbook, and that's what we all at A&T recognize as one of our untraditional trademark names. Is that when I would say it's funny. When I was in school, I always pronounced it Ayante. I thought it was a whole nother word. I was like, Ayante, that's cool.
That explains your email. I got you. Hey, man, we know that Aggies is a proud brand. No cap about that. Definitely appreciate you joining us. That's a wrap for us. Make sure y'all subscribe for all the latest and the greatest. It's been live with Brandon Blakney. You dig?